gunslingers, and we are unsheathing the word just for a few minutes before the cafe closes. I'm going to use this opportunity on my Shabbat live streams and Sunday live streams to get a tiny bit deeper, because during the week I do a lot of live broadcasts, and the Spirit of the Lord will just speak things out. Just things will come up from the Word, and a lot of times I'm limited on time, and we can't really get into them, or it happens very spontaneously. So now we get to just unpack that a little bit. So we were talking about the Lord's Supper on Coach Dave Live. If you haven't caught those, there's a couple of really killer broadcasts that I'd recommend you to go take a look at. Just go to CoachDaveLive.com, and one was just yesterday, and the other one was a week before that I did. But we have a lot of fun every morning just hanging out in the coach's huddle, and we're getting into a lot of the besetting issues that have caused the church to be ineffective, and how we rebuild that from the ground up. Let's see if I can just get a little bit different angle here, as I'm out on the streets of Mexico City. Rock on. Okay, so we've been talking about the Lord's Supper, and when it came around to me at the round table, an important point that came up was shutting the door on the enemy, and that the Lord's table, the table of communion, is really an extension of the Sabbath worship that was so important in Israel, both on the weekly Sabbaths and on the special Sabbaths. If anybody doesn't know, the Last Supper before the Lord went out and was betrayed was a special Sabbath. It was a lunar Sabbath. It was not the weekly Sabbath. That's why Jesus was not crucified on a Friday, contrary to obvious what's commonly preached. Hey, they did a good job. Didn't get my cappuccino too hot. Fantastic. So, the Lord's table, and we were talking about taking communion, having an altar in your home, and here again I suggested that the table was the holy place in the Hebrew mindset, and that joining other people at the dinner table was a very, very big deal, an intimate thing, and that unbelievers were not allowed in those days. Nations that have racist words for outsiders. In Japanese, gaijin, that's like, that's a round eye. That is an alien. That is someone that does not belong in their nation. Well, the Hebrew mindset was very much like that. And here we have this atmosphere of inclusion, but there are cultural differences that are very, very serious. And it was prohibited to dine with the uncircumcised. So let's just look at two quick places in the Bible. And in the Sabbath worship, people were prohibited. They were prohibited from kindling a fire. They were prohibited from cooking. They were prohibited from carrying burdens. Work was not allowed. So when the Sabbath, at sundown, this time of day, when the Sabbath began, when the sun set, that's when the door was shut. The door was shut on the unbelievers. And the Lord's people, the circumcised, would have their own time together. And really, this is what the Lord ordained at His table. We can make it so mystical, and really it has to do with the communion between living stones, between people that have the life of the Lord Jesus Christ in them. So two quick things, and I haven't even looked these up, so we're just going to look at them in the Word. But two times that it was prohibited to go into the street, which are types of the Passover. One is on the scarlet ribbon in the conquest of Jericho. Another is the Passover in Exodus, where the blood of the lamb was literally applied to the doorposts and the lintel, and then the door was shut, and it was absolutely prohibited. If anybody went outside, their blood was upon them. If they went out with the destroyer, okay, that was on them. So let's just look at those really quick and see what we see. Okay, the book of Joshua. And let's get pretty early on. They're closing up shop here, but we'll be wrapped up in 10 minutes, so no trouble. Okay, this is Joshua 2:18. The spies, the men of Israel, are making their oath with Rahab. Let's go back just a tiny bit to 16. And she said to them, "Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days until the pursuers be returned, and afterward may you go your way." Joshua 2:17. And the men said to her, "We will be blameless of this thine oath which thou hast made us to swear. Behold, when we come into this land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window which thou didst let us down by." So this is the blood of the Lord Jesus. This is prophetic foreshadowing. This is more than foreshadowing. It's prophecy that the scarlet cord would go through the generations, and that people could take hold of that scarlet cord and escape destruction. And this is also typifying, setting forth the example that the Lord Jesus would be present at the table when we meet and partake in his name. Okay. Verse 18. "Behold, when we come into the land, thou shalt bind this line of scarlet thread in the window, which thou didst let us down by, and thou shalt bring thy father and thy mother and thy brethren and all thy father's household home unto thee. And it shall be that whosoever shall go out of the doors of thy house into the street, his blood shall be upon his head, and we will be guiltless. And whosoever shall be with thee in the house, his blood shall be on our head, if any hand be upon him." So the invading armies would be guilty if they killed anybody that was inside the house. But if anybody went out into the street, it was on them, because the army was going to be out there raging against the heathen. Okay, and this happened, and you know what's kind of amazing is Rahab's house was built into the wall, and so when the walls came tumbling down, not only was the scarlet thread there, which was obvious enough, but that house was still standing. And then it says that they brought her out and all that belonged to them. Let's just find that real quick. So here's the crossing of the Jordan, chapter 5, the hill of the foreskins. This is very important that those that don't understand, the idolaters and the addicts, we got to keep them out when we have our special time when the Lord joins with us and with the living stones. I know everybody wants to just make this about the some little thing you do in the middle of a church service, take 5 minutes. That's really not the way that the Lord set it out. This is the table. Okay, 6:20. So the people shouted when the priest blew with the trumpets, and it came to pass when the people heard the sound, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat, so that the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city, destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, Go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. ¿Estoy bien hasta las 8, joven? ¿O me esperes? Dame 5 minutos. Le pago. Sí, deja que acabar lo que hago. Y se pueden arreglarlo todo alrededor. All right. So they brought out the woman. I'm in the middle of verse 22. Go into thy harlot's house and bring out thence the woman and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in and brought out Rahab and her father and her mother and her brethren and all that she had. And they brought out all her kindred and left them without the camp of Israel. And they burnt the city with fire. 25. And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had. And lo and behold, this is very beautiful, she became a proselyte. She dwelleth in Israel even to this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. So isn't that beautiful? They pushed the heathens out, but they extended grace to certain ones that were chosen. And you know what? Sometimes we do allow people at the table that are marginal because they're exploring. They want to see how we live together as Christians. They want to see how Christians behave themselves. And they are in the process of becoming a proselyte. All right, let's look at the other one real quick. They're throwing me out, but that's fine. I knew I was short on time. Okay, so in the Exodus, and this is super important because the death angel was in the street this time. You know, the Hebrews are very clear that it was Adonai himself, that it was God himself that raged in the street. Other places in Exodus, it's very clear that the Lord sends his angel. Other places it says that the destroyer will be out there. We need to understand that this is one of the faces of God, that he comes to judge the wicked. And thank God, we need to not take lightly the fact that there's a scarlet thread, that we have the blood of the Lamb to hang on to. Okay, Exodus 13. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn, whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both man and beast, it is mine. Okay. Then he tells what he's going to do. 15. And it came to pass when Pharaoh would hardly let us go, that the Lord slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all that openeth the matrix, being males, but all the firstborn of my children I redeem. Now let's get on to the actual doing of it. Yeah, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. Let's go back. It's raining and my pages are sticking together to boot. Alright. The unleavened bread that they had in their kneading troughs. Okay, here we go. The Passover. And thus shall ye eat it. Verse 11 in chapter 12. With your loins girded, and your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and will smite all the firstborn. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. Now I want to find this here where he tells of the destruction. Verse 23, again, for the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. So there's the Lord along with his armies, the destroyer. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and thy sons forever. And it's very important to remember that he called by night. You see some of the film adaptations of this, and it is not at all that way. The keeping of the lamb for the sacrifice. There's a beautiful repetition if you read this straight through. Chapter 10, chapter 11, chapter 12. But there's something that I'm looking for specifically. can't find it, and I'm out of time. Maybe we'll hit that on Sunday. Nevertheless, I think we understand what was in the street, the destroyer. And that's what we hide out from. So it's important to not mix when we come to the Lord's table. It's important to sanctify the Lord's table and his supper, and to be careful who's around when we do that, because that was the core of the home in the Hebrew mindset. All right, y'all, maybe we'll meet on Sunday. We're having a lot of fun, and